artificial attention in the classroom.
Is there another one?
Because sometimes I'm feeling normally that my problem is I'm more like a very hesitant to have a sense of
In an effort to actually accomplish something.
So try to
I decided we should have a call-out meeting before spring break.
It's very helpful actually.
Call-out meeting until after spring break then.
You know, now you sense tension.
Yeah.
And people super talented and all are
And so of course then I kind of actually had to prepare for that.
trying to.
So you guys want to get settled? We'll start in just maybe a minute. You guys want to grab another slice of pizza or whatever?
I'd be very curious to see you in your normal activist mode.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I think you make a lot of really, every time you say something, I feel I learn a lot from it. And I wonder, yeah, I would be interested to see you in another mode.
You make very good points all the time. Make me pause and think.
I try not to say too much because I feel sometimes people speak a lot. After, like, maybe a certain portion of what they're saying is good, but then the rest of it isn't as helpful. So I try to be strategic with my interactions or interventions, but it's been really interesting to observe what that is.
One lesson I learned is I lack this creative itch and to be patient. So that's what I'm trying to always try to look at the creative part.
What did you, so where are you from?
I'm a Tibetan.
Okay.
But I'm at the law school.
It's not the same for cheese.
But I'm becoming a law
Case study was the reading.
What about you?
Like
So before, I'm in the mid-career program.
about.
Before career, I started
And sometimes there would be sort of a conceptual
on slavery, so I'm also very used to that activist role, but I've tended to shy away from the public spotlight, so I try to do it all in the background, so influencing people. And what I'm hoping to do is after graduation, find enough courage to do the types of interventions that I'm practicing in the course. So maybe mine is a little opposite of yours.
Yes, I could see that you're wanting that.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn.
I mean, to speak in the whole class, how you say it without getting assassinated.
And I feel I haven't been assassinated yet.
Yes.
I was wondering, because I think someone wrote
Neutral, but hope, and also hope that you're speaking for the majority. I always try to look at that. You know that. Can I reflect on because I tried that before when you were saying I was dealing with this question. And what do you mean, Jorge? So you know better, you're better than us?
Yeah,
Tell us, I was just trying to, so that I can save on this side. Right now I can, kind of assassinate and isolate you. And then Jorge was everyone speaking, I said, don't get in that trap, deal with Scott him. That's what I try to look for. Because I'm like, because I get burned all the time, I could be Jorge. So that's then I try to let go, Then I don't want to speak. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I don't have to speak. That's what I try to learn. Other Indians club.
Okay, guys, I think we're going to get started so we can get out of here at 7:30. Today, this is the third of 5 digital workshops in the digital workshop series here at the Kennedy School. My name is Ramchan. I'm part of the Digital Advisory Board here at the Shorenstein Center. And we are working closely with the Shorenstein Center to meet the growing demand here at the Kennedy School for some very practical, skills-oriented digital workshops. We've had a pretty good attendance at the past few workshops, which some of you may have attended, and we're hoping that these can continue well into next year as well, and hopefully go from being a supplement to the course curriculum to actually become embedded and integrated within the current classes that are offered here at the Kennedy School. Today's topic is building an online community, as you can see. I can just see from the people I know in this room, there is a very diverse set of backgrounds, interests, and degree programs here at the Kennedy School. And I think regardless of what your trajectory is upon leaving here, this is an incredibly essential skill set to have. We're very lucky today to have someone who is a huge name in online global activism. You don't have to take my word for it. You can query the Google gods if you have your laptops, and you'll see his name come up again and again. Ben is no stranger to Harvard. He actually was an undergraduate here at the college, graduated in 2003. He worked with developmental economist Jeffrey Sachs when he was here. He was also working with Al Franken, as you all know, he's a senator from Minnesota. Al Franken had a study group, an incredibly popular one when he was here. They had 700 applicants for only 14 spots, and Ben was lucky enough to be one of those 14 people. Upon graduating, Ben later went and worked some more with Al Franken. He was a producer for Al Franken's show on Air America, and he also worked with another guy who was elected senator for the state of Ohio, Sherrod Brown. And more recently, he's been working with Avaz.org. Avaz.org, it's for the guys, anyone has a laptop and wants to get online, it's avaaz.org. If you guys haven't heard of it, it's been an incredibly successful online community for activism. It was founded just 2 years ago in 2007, and they've already gotten just under 4 million members signed up already. They advocate for a wide range of issues, everything from climate change to poverty. Ben is the U.S. campaign advisor for Avaz.org, and I think you guys can all join me in welcoming Ben Wikler to the Kennedy School.
Thanks so much for joining all of us today. This is Building an Online Community, Implications of Social Media for the Policy Professional, a name obviously chosen for the acronym. Specifically, what I'd like to talk about today is what sort of the internet is useful for, and things that it's not so useful for. And then I'm going to argue that email is particularly useful, and the practical skill building part will be talking about how to do really good email stuff. It's not the only way to go. I think there's a strong case for it being the best. That'll be about 45 minutes, and then for the second, I guess, the last half hour, I'd be happy to do Q&A about what we just talked about or anything else that might be useful. So let's start with why. So the internet obviously is a big deal. There are now, I think, 1.4 billion people who have email addresses. 1.7 billion people use the internet. It's exploding. And working in government or politics or policy or advocacy, it can feel as though one ought to be using the internet effectively. And I'd like to actually dispute that idea. I don't think that there's anything particularly special about it. I just think that it's a useful tool if it can help you do something that you want to do. And so there's a lot of people working in the kinds of fields that we all work in or hope to work in. A lot of people have sort of internet anxiety and a feeling that if their organization doesn't have a blog, a great Facebook page, a Twitter feed, an email list, a YouTube channel, and all this stuff, then it's not doing a good job. And a corollary to that is people feeling as though if they do all those things, then they are doing a good job. And I think both of those are really untrue. The fact is, if you're trying to reach a particular audience and that audience uses the internet, then it can be a great way to reach them. It has a lot of, for Avaz, it's kind of the engine of all of our advocacy. We use it to mobilize people to, contact their governments or donate funds to to be able to do stuff. But there's lots of different models for using the internet, and one of the funny things that you'll see is like some of the most kind of the savviest organizations that use the internet have terrible websites. And there's a good reason for that, which we'll get into in a little while. So the first thing I'd like to say is if you're feeling internet anxiety, it's not helpful to you, I'd suggest leaving that on the table as you leave today. And only use the internet and use social media and all this stuff if you feel like it's actually going to get you someplace you need to go. Now that said, it really can, and it can be really useful. So a couple of quick examples. One is the Center for American Progress. Center for American Progress is a tremendous progressive think tank based in Washington, D.C. This is their homepage. As you can see, there's a huge amount of content on it. It's very exciting. CAP is one of the smartest kind of policy organizations using in the online space. And the reasons for that have nothing to do with this page. Their homepage is almost irrelevant to the best stuff that they do. This is one of their blogs. So for Center for American Progress, their idea, what they do is they give kind of frames and policy information to policymakers and also to people in the media. And their strategy for doing that, like the fact is that people don't really go to websites in general unless there's something exciting or interesting or undressed or a baby laughing or whatever on a website that attracts them to it. And on Think Progress, which is one of their blogs, they have a sort of steady stream of cool stuff. And so even though on their website they have like every issue you could care about, they have links to briefings about all kinds of stuff. Blogs like Think Progress, well, you can see what the traffic statistics look like. They have more than they have something like 36 million unique visitors a year to their blogs, and like 6 million unique visitors to their non-blog websites.
This is just for them, right?
It's just for them.
Isn't there a correlation here, though? Like, if their website was better, maybe they'd have more traffic, right?
So I'd argue that the answer to that is no. Almost nobody has a sufficiently interesting website that it's a draw in itself. Basically, for almost everyone, either you need like blogs or something that's an attraction, or you need email, which will be the big thing we talk about in a second. But even if you think about the biggest sites in the world, like YouTube, for example, YouTube.com, the front page gets very little traffic. Almost all of their traffic goes to the pages within YouTube, to actual videos, and most of the views of YouTube videos come from videos that people put on other sites. So I guess the point of what I'm saying here is not that you should definitely have a blog, it's that you shouldn't care too much about your front page of your homepage. It's basically a business card, and I think, in terms of the resources of your own time or your organization's time, you do fine literally just having your business card information on the front page of your homepage, and then thinking about, that's what people are generally looking for if they come to your site, and thinking about what it is that's going to connect to your sort of community or audience for other stuff. For the question of whether to do a blog, I think the one argument for doing a blog is if you actually have people who are writers who are going to bring a good voice to it and can do it regularly. And so what's not useful is having a blog where you basically post links to press releases, or you do something aside from writing a blog. It's the same. It's sort of like people read blogs for the same reason that they read magazines or watch television shows, which is that they're actually interesting. And so if you don't have time to actually make it really solid, there's really no reason to have one. And you can do all kinds of great stuff, through the internet or in the world without a blog. In their case, they have great blogs, so that's been very successful for them. The other thing that they do is that they have a whole bunch of different email lists. And for Center for American Progress, their strategy is not to get as many people as possible, it's to get the people that they're trying to reach. The magical thing about email is that it is a push medium. It comes to you, and people generally treat their inboxes kind of like a to-do list. So, they try to get through all the email that comes at them. Center for American Progress does a lot of work to reach out to actual people in agencies, people in congressional staff, and subscribe to them to emails that are super relevant to what they're doing. And the result of that is that the kind of bang for the buck of them sending email is really high. So that's for sort of a general policy media shop. What I do is organizing, and organizing is, I think, connected to lots of different stuff. Advocacy organizations and political campaigns are the two kind of biggest pillars of online organizing at this point. And for those two things, this is a handy rule of thumb. Websites rule, email rule. Email is really the key to the whole thing. And if you look at, like, this is the front page of our website, doesn't matter. This is an email. This is where our traffic comes from on our site. It's just overwhelmingly driven from email. And for political campaigns and advocacy organizations that use email for organizing, the only parts of your website you really need to care about are the pages that are linked to from your emails. Yeah.
Can I ask when that data, what date?
This represents traffic from January 1st to today of this year. Facebook is a growing share, which I'll discuss briefly for my next slide.
Is Twitter also growing as well?
Twitter is growing a bit. Facebook is just way, way, way bigger than Twitter. Like most people, there's a lot of people that send tweets. Very few people actually read most tweets. So if you are looking for an opportunity to write more short messages, I recommend Twitter really highly. Outside of that, it's a lot less powerful than email and less powerful than Facebook as an organizing tool. Yeah.
Is this applicable to all types of campaigns that you do, or is that very?
Yeah, I mean the exception would be campaigns that are about, like, hey everybody, let's all tweet messages about this person, and then Twitter's a bigger deal. But pretty much everything we do, this is what the graph looks like. Yeah.
Are you going to talk about sort of how many emails and how frequently you send out the emails that get you this?
Yeah. Yeah.
So just to clarify, so you're saying the websites, so email is a great way to get traffic to your website, but ultimately it seems to me that you're still trying to get people to come to your website.
Well, the thing is, so in our case, what we want people to do is to take actions, and so most of the actions that we'd like people to take, they have to actually come to our website to do it. So signing a petition or sending an email to a leader. So that's why the website is a useful thing. But there's other kinds of campaigns for us, like asking people to call governments. We'll send them the phone number, and then the impact, in the email itself, and then the impact of that comes from the email. For an organization like Center for American Progress, it's really about information that they're trying to distribute, and so for them, they don't think of clicks through to their website as an important metric to evaluate the success of their emails. Yeah.
I'm on hours.org list, and how did you compile all those emails? It's a vast list,
It's all entirely come from word of mouth, of people sending emails to other people and people signing up. So you probably signed a Navaz petition at some point, or participated in a campaign. And that's how you got on our list. Yeah.
Is there a point at which pushing out a lot of emails begins to get diminishing returns and recipients just delete them automatically without even opening them?
Yeah. So the key thing to sort of email organizing or email this kind of email work is sending emails that people actually want to get. At Avaz, we have a pretty strict practice of sending emails to a random sample of our members before we send our full list and looking at the reaction. And if there's not a certain level of interaction, so for example, if it's a petition, if less than a third of people actually click the link in the email to sign the petition, then we don't send it to the list because that's the signal from our members that they're not that interested in the message of the campaign. Different groups have different ways of estimating that. You can look at the unsubscription rate. You can look at whether the open rate goes down over time, and there are some groups that people's sort of appetite for email varies most of all depending on how useful they're finding your email. So if you have a weather update, that might be something people want every day. For an organization like us, generally the appetite is sort of 1 or 2 messages a week. Before a really big moment, like during the Copenhagen Climate Summit, we sent, I think by the end it was 2 or 3 emails a day, and there was a high tolerance for that because it was a huge moment that we'd been, we'd pulled our list. There was a huge interest in. But the critical and the only critical thing is sending messages to people that connect with them and what they're interested in. And it's a quick road to know where to send messages that people don't want. Yeah.
What size of a list do you need to get to be able to run experiments like you're talking about with
Yeah. Well, it depends on the type of ask that you're making of people. So to use petitions as an example, they're sort of bread and butter for online organizing. You just have to kind of do the math backwards from the size you need to get a statistically valid sample. So if you're looking at, like, typically sort of 15 to 20% of people will ultimately open an email. And then for us, a really strong email, half the people will click. For a not so good one, maybe a quarter. And so that means like 5%. 5% of the list will actually click through. 5 to 10%. And so, like, when we send random samples, they're usually like 5,000 or 10,000 people, and we wait a few hours and we can tell. But even if you have a 25,000 person list, it's worth sending a test of a couple thousand to see how interesting it is, because the other 23,000 would be delighted to have their time saved by not receiving your message that isn't great. A couple more questions, and then I'll move through the presentation, and then I'm sure there'll be a lot more. Yeah.
Just related to that, so for example, I sent out a weekly sort of easy digest kind of thing, and our list is about 25,000 people. Yep. So I just want to clarify so that for our weekly e-zine, should we be sending out a test, or is this for just something that's a new, that we're having like a new ask, like a new action that we want our subscribers to take to do the test?
So in your case, it's more of like a newsletter?
Yeah, but we also have like promotional emails that we send out as well throughout the week.
I would guess that the newsletter is something people have a really clear sense of what it's going to be each week, and for that you could, one of the things we do is we just pull our list regularly, random samples, and say, like, we feel like we've been getting too many emails or suggestions on how we can improve. Stuff like that can be really useful for getting feedback. Also, just looking if there's particularly high unsubscription rates on one message. After someone unsubscribes from our list, we have a form that where we ask them, like, why did you unsubscribe? And that can be really helpful. I think for the other promotional things, that might be a case where it's more unexpected and not the same thing each time. So there you might want to pay particularly close attention to metrics.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The question is, if don't you think that it's a little bit tricky to say that the email is the dominant medium, because the email is the whole web. So the problem is how to build a community.
Yeah.
Within the email.
That's what we're going to start moving into. So the last thing before we get into how to use email to do something, a quick note about Facebook. There's a number of ways to try to sort of engage people on Facebook. You can create a group, you can create a page, people can fan the page or they can join the group. And a lot of organizations put a lot of work into creating a page that lots of people fan, and then there's news updates and those show up in people's news feeds. We've experimented with that. We have an active page. We talk to lots of groups to do that. I don't really recommend that as the key way to go. And the reason for that is that if you post an update from your organization's Facebook page, it's part of the ever-flowing river of Facebook updates that go past people. And the 100,000 email subscribers, I would say, are 10 to 100 times as valuable as 100,000 fans on a Facebook page. It's a really extraordinary, how much more responsive people are to email than to Facebook updates. But that said, Facebook is actually incredibly powerful in the following case: when people actually post your stuff to their Facebook feeds. So that's the point of this slide. This is I just pulled off a page on our site. 9,535 people press the share button on that page and it posted to their Facebook feeds. And essentially, people's willingness to share content on Facebook is much higher than their willingness to forward emails to lots and lots of people. So if I get an email that I like, I might send it to, my wife and my dad, who are sibling. But I wouldn't send it to 1,500 people, whereas I regularly share things on Facebook, and 1,500 people on Facebook will have the opportunity to see those. Even if only a small fraction of them see them, it could still be, effectively hundreds of people. So really prioritizing, if you have content that you want other people to help push out, I would say really make it as easy as possible for them to share it on Facebook. Unfortunately, you just have to grab a little piece of code off the Facebook website to do that. We're going to talk like this. Any quick questions about that, or we'll dive into the email? Yeah.
Really quick question. I wondered if this advice would be different if someone is looking at a purely American audience, or if they actually have a global campaign where they're trying to get people from other countries where Facebook and email might be at sort of different levels of popularity and engagement. And I wonder if it's sort of the same in every country, or if it's just advice for those looking for American audiences in the way that Americans are digitally connected.
So I'm actually, I do, organize our U.S. campaigns, but I run all of our global climate campaigning and a number of other campaigns. This is what we found the whole world over. Facebook is more popular in a number of other countries than it is in the U.S. And is of growing significance. Email is still 3 or 4 times as many people are on email as on Facebook. I'm watching the Boz video on there. We do often country by country breakdowns of where sort of growth and where traffic is coming from, and these ratios, broadly speaking, Israel for some reason is very, very Facebook oriented. Some places block, like some in France, we're in a sort of discussion with internet service providers about delivering our email, so their other channels are more important. But generally speaking, this is what we have all over the place. Okay, so email. We all know bad email is spam. I propose that good email can be like filet or a tofurkey or whatever vegetarians think is equivalent to filet. Good email is actually a great communications medium, and in a way, I think it's analogous to radio in the sense that it's something that when you get a good email from an organization, it's like getting a message from a personal message from a friend that arrives in a similar format to a message that a friend might send you. The same way that radio sounds like, can sound like an individual person whispering in your ear. Good political or nonprofit emails can actually, have some emotional punch. They can be like a speech. On the Obama campaign, the people who wrote emails were actually like right up there with the speechwriters in terms of actually really developing their sense of the candidate and campaign staff's voice. And like a great speech, good emails can actually travel all over the world and have a significant impact on stuff. Also, like a speech, there are some sort of tricks of the trade to good emails that can make a gigantic difference for how people respond. So I'd like to welcome you to the secret formula that underlies the Obama presidency, Abaz.org's global list, and much else in this world, which you can see here. This is basically the outline for almost all good organizing emails from groups on every issue in all languages that I've interacted with. And this is what we'll be walking through. If we had more time, I'd invite everyone to practice writing an email according to this formula, but I encourage you to do that in your free time. The elements are as follows. Chrysotunity is a word coined by Homer Simpson. Homer was informed by, I think, his daughter that the Chinese character for crisis is also the Chinese character for opportunity. And he said, "Oh, chrysotunity." Crisis-tunity is a crisis and an opportunity. And the sort of key thing, the key way to start an email is by going straight to the crisis-tunity of the moment. One of the big mistakes in email, as in rhetoric, is starting with a long preamble. A good email organizer once said, you should write a great email and then delete the first paragraph, and then you probably got something pretty good. Start with a crisis-tunity. We'll talk about that in a second. Next is the reader-focused theory of change. This again, what the reader-focused theory of change is an argument for why the person reading this email can make a difference. And so, in other words, it's not just global warming is a crisis, let's fix it. It's global warming is a crisis. President Obama is carefully watching public reaction, and our voices now can make decisions about what to do next. You have to ground your argument to ask people to do something in an argument for why it's actually going to matter. And this is where bad emails generally fall down. And the next thing is an ask that's clear. Not so much for newsletters, but for any kind of organizing email, there's one ask per email, and it should be crystal clear what it is that you're asking people to do. Then you can put the link, then supporting information, buttressing any of the above stuff. Ask again, another link. We test different numbers of links, and it's not an iron rule, but generally giving people a few opportunities to pay attention is useful. And then the movement story. Now the fact is most people have stopped reading well before the movement story down here. But the idea of the movement story is an argument for why what you're doing matters, even if you don't win this particular fight. It's an appeal to underlying principle. It's a sort of pulling out to a larger context. And for people that really care about whatever it is that you're engaging them on, this can actually be sort of a sustaining force. And then thank you, and then the PS, which is often the most read or second most read part of the email. Something we don't always remember to do at ABODS, but it's well recommended. The most important stuff here is the stuff above the first link. Most people, I think eye tracking studies find that people spend like 3 seconds on an email. Typically, they open it, scan for what they want to do, and your biggest goal is to give them a concise, chance to decide whether they want to engage. We have the sort of philosophy at ABODS that we treat our members like presidents and prime ministers who we have just a second to brief as they walk down the hall. And our first job is to tell them what it is that we want to talk to them about, and basically sketch out our argument, and then they can decide whether to dig in further. If you value your readers' time as much as they do, they don't mind if you send them a lot of email if they can quickly figure out if they actually want to do something with it or not. The most annoying thing is when people have to dig to figure out whether they want to engage.
Will you just clarify when it says link, what you're talking about, and also the PS?
Yeah, so we're going to go through an example of each of these in a second. But link basically means, in my case, www.abaz.org / sign the climate petition or whatever. Yeah.
So, I don't know if you're going to get into this, but what about things like bold, big text size, or certain things? Are you going to get into that later?
We'll get into that a bit, yeah. But the short, I don't have a slide on bolding. The short answer on putting bold text in an email is the ideal thing is that the email is scannable, so that people can just read the bold parts and get a sense of what's going on. There's if using a little bit of bold is better than using no bold text. Using a lot is probably worse than using none. And there's a temptation when you're writing something that you really care about to put a lot of it in bold, which we succumb to too much in the bots. But I'd urge you to use, don't be too bold in your bolding.
Graphics?
Graphics, we go back and forth. We just did another test today and found that an image in the email that we were sending slightly depressed the amount of people that clicked through. So one thing to remember is that Gmail and I think increasingly Yahoo and Hotmail have graphics turned off by default, and most people have no idea that you can click the place where it says click here to turn your graphics on, to turn the graphics on. I think generally you're better off not worrying too much about the formatting and images and stuff. Other quick question?
Yeah, and you might be getting this later, so cut me off if you are. But I was gonna recommend using tinyURL as like a cheap way to see how many people are clicking through.
Yeah, that's so one. If you're starting from scratch, there's lots of tools you can do to tell how many people click. It's just one of the most important things is to pay attention to the number. So why don't let's get into this and then we can talk more about it. So first we have sensitivity. This is fairly somber. I'm going to use as an example the email that you see here. This is a campaign of Buzz launched in February. It's about a proposed law in Uganda that would make homosexuality punishable by death. And it's something that, you'll see the argument in the course of the email. So, and I should say this particular email generated a tremendous international response. I think from this email alone, 250,000 people signed a petition. It raised, I think, $10,000 or $20,000 after that. But then we emailed everyone who signed the petition and raised another 150. And we're using that to run opinion polling in Uganda about this proposed law and support a coalition of church leaders and rights activists and stuff in Uganda that are working against it. It's, so this email we're walking through is actually now a fairly potent, it's the wellspring of a fairly potent force in this debate. So, the crisis unity. Uganda's parliament is preparing to pass a brutal new law that would punish gay people with prison and even death. With the decision expected in days, only an irresistible wave of worldwide pressure will be enough to save Frank's life and many others. In this case, there's a picture of Frank and just a quote from Frank, who's an Abbas member in Uganda. As you can see, this is time-bound. Deadlines make a big difference. Don't send people an email about something that will happen in a month. In this case, the government actually has responded to the international criticism by delaying the decision. So it looks like we might actually have a month at this point. When we sent it, we definitely didn't. And we actually find often a stronger response for saying this is happening tomorrow, let's do everything we can right now, than we do for saying this is happening in 2 weeks, where there's enough time to build momentum. Again, it's putting yourself in your reader's shoes. You can put it off if it's not happening really soon. So, and if you test something and it doesn't do that well, it might actually be worth testing again close to the deadline because that can really change people's response. Reader-focused theory of change. So this is in the quote from Frank in the email. If there's a huge global response, our government will see that Uganda will be internationally isolated by the proposed law and strike it down. So this goes directly to the reader being asked to sign this petition. It's an argument from a credible source that actually the international response that will be manifested in this petition could matter. Then the ask. Let's build a huge petition to stop the gay death law. That's an awkward phrase. Click here to take action, then forward this email. It said sign the petition a couple sentences before. This is, asking people directly to do the thing you're asking for, and then asking them to forward it. One of the key things here is just not being shy about asking people to do the thing you're asking for. I worked with MoveOn.org on the election campaign, and one email that we tested had the same ask 6 times in a row, and it actually had a really strong response. You don't want to get too annoying, but don't shy away from asking people directly to do the thing that you want them to do. So support. So by support, I mean preempting questions that people will have, the sources of skepticism about why, especially about the theory of change, about why this is a good idea or why it's worthwhile, giving factual background, so in this case, the petition will be delivered because of the 78, etc. If you're doing a petition, very good idea to explain how it'll be delivered. Lots of bad online organizing efforts involve building petitions that don't actually go anywhere. They're just efforts to build email lists. We try to make it sort of pride not to do that, but it's also, people are rightly very skeptical of this kind of thing, and giving concrete evidence and plans is a good idea. We also find that people are much more likely to forward messages if they have a vivid idea of what's going to happen to it. Initial international criticism has already driven the president to call for a review. Evidence that something is already working is really effective. We had a whole section about provisions of the law, and at the bottom of the email we had a link to the PDF of the actual bill, so people could read it, see what's actually going on. And then a whole segment about how, about the opposition to this law in Uganda. In this case, one of the keys to it is that proponents of this bill in Uganda are claiming that gay rights is, a Western imperial position, and that they're defending Uganda's culture from against people outside. But in fact, there's a tremendous movement within Uganda opposing it, and that's the group that we're standing in solidarity with. It's useful to have, essentially if you read an email and it's a little bit unconvincing to you, it's a good idea to find some things to support. Try to avoid the temptation to put in every supporting and buttressing fact you can imagine. Although, funnily enough, the only thing that really matters in terms of length, again, is what's above the first link, because that's all that most people read. As long as it's short and concise and convincing above the first link, you can put in a huge amount of stuff underneath and it doesn't change the reaction that much. Except it makes people feel tired when they look at it. Yeah. Yeah. Salutation. This is something that, so this is a typical end slot. This is a typical ending from an Avaz email. It's kind of a general practice, and I'm not sure if it's really a best practice or not, that groups have emails come from individual people and they're signed off by members of the team. One of the nice things about that is that staff and people tend to invest themselves a lot in making something great if their name is literally attached to it. Get Up in Australia, a group that sort of works on a similar model, everything's signed just by Get Up, and they've done well, so I wouldn't be too wedded to this, but I think it's a nice thing to do. And then this is an example of a movement story pulling back from this immediate crisis unity to the larger frame of this kind of crisis of homophobia and laws criminalizing gay people, and how this campaign is an effort in part just to demonstrate the breadth of opposition. In this email, I forgot to put a PS, but this is the kind of PS you might do. And then, once again, you have your link. So that is the anatomy of an email that went did pretty well around the world. 100,000 people who signed this petition were not previously subscribers to Avaz, so we were able to track how many people it's forwarded to, and it's been forwarded more than a million times to people around the world. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the subject that you put, and also can you say whether you always send out emails in English or do you do it in other languages as well?
Sure. So we send emails actually in 14 languages, and you can sign up on our site for whichever language you like. 6 or 7 languages we send most of our campaigns, and then some, many fewer. Basically because we have 7 languages of sort of capacity within the team, and we have to work with volunteer or paid translators for others. The subject lines we test. So that's another instance where large email list helps, but even with a small list, it's worth sending random samples with a bunch of different subject lines, and it can make a significant difference. In this campaign, we had several that were just about the law itself, and then Save Frank's Life, I think, did like 15 or 20% better than Stop the Uganda Death Law, or different types of things. So there aren't really great rules for subject lines, except that relatively short is good. One thing that this doesn't do is to give some opportunity for your readers to figure out what the email is about before they open it. Especially for things like fundraisers, that's actually usually a pretty good idea. you might not get as many people opening it, but more people will wind up taking the action because they can, if funding to stop, funding to save the ocean is something that they're interested in doing, then somebody find like donate to help save our oceans gives them a chance to, to select themselves. Yeah.
So a couple of questions. So one on the subject, do you always have something standard that's always there, like let's say avaz.org and then Colon, whatever you, or do you not have that?
So this, somewhere. Okay, so up there you can see Save Frank's Life is the subject line. AliceJavaz.org is the sender name. So all of our messages come from the name of the person and then avaz.org.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So instead of putting in the subject, it's in the sentence.
Yeah.
Second question was, so in terms of links, have you noticed if these two work better? Just a link that's sort of saying click here with the link on here, or a link like this one?
So the reason why we use this, and not everyone does this, is that a lot of people are using non-HTML email things. So in this case, we actually recently you can see the question mark VL at the end.
Yeah.
So we can see that something like 5 to 10% of our clicks are coming from more like 5. They're coming from people where like the VL isn't in the underlying link. That's only for people who actually are using non-HTML email programs. And so we can see that if it said, well, you'll see an example in a second that doesn't use this. Basically, the link can break if it doesn't work like that. So we try to put the actual URL. The other nice thing about that is people can like copy it and instant message it to each other, or it makes it easier for people.
Can you talk about testing in a little more detail? So how do you actually get the data? Like when you say we tested that. So
yeah.
How does that actually work?
So in this case, so basically there are programs. There's lots of different sort of toolkits that you can use for in the corporate world it's called email marketing. In my world it's online organizing, and those tend to have. I can show you a page in our backend after the slideshow, but essentially we can choose a few different subject lines and send the email simultaneously, and it sort of cycles through the different subject lines and shows us the open rate for each of those different versions. So we can say, this one has 1,100 people open, this one has 1,200, and then when we send an email to the full list, we'll do whatever did best. If you are looking for a program to use, a good cheap one is called MailChimp. MailChimp, which is very user-friendly and easy, and it's all web-based. And if you want a really awesome one, you should use ActionKit. ActionKit is was developed by the people who made MoveOn.org tools. It's great for online campaigning. Some types of things it only works. Those are basically both English. For our system was sort of custom built for us, and unfortunately, to my knowledge, it's the only system that really does lots of languages, global online organizing well. So if you're looking to do this in multilingual areas, then we should talk afterwards about where you should get started. Yeah?
In terms of strategy, once you decide which works the best, do you send just that one, or you target and segment your audience? And another question, is there a way to change just a little bit, like the signature? One of the studies says that people are more likely to answer the email when the initials of the name, actually, which is at the top, are the same like the receiver. So can you target? I mean, it's a very serious study.
Yeah, so there's a study that's done that finds that people respond more to emails that seem to come from someone with the same initials as them, and also that they respond more if it comes from someone with the same name as them. We could do that. We don't. We think it's a little creepy. The other thing is that, at our end, there are whole teams of people that work on different campaigns, but Alice J actually led this campaign. She was on the phone with Frank for, hours in the week before sending this. And for us, when you send an email from Avaz, you can actually, this is a secret. I have this. Doesn't spread too much on the internet, but if you write back to a message like this, you'll get an automatic response that says, we can't read responses to every message. Use the avaz.org/contact web form. But if you write back with "Dear Alice," it'll be forwarded to Alice, to the actual Alice. And if you write back Dear Ben, it's forwarded to me. And so
In the
that's
subject or in the first
no, just in the first line.
You have people with every name, A, B, C, D.
But I guess what I'm saying is that there's
It's okay.
the actual sort of personal connection and communication is a big part of making this work. And online organizing is a lot about listening as well as writing and communicating. We have people that on the team that read all the messages sent through our web form and send summaries to the rest of the team. We see some samples of responses. We do polls regularly and read through the responses, and it's just incredibly important for keeping us. Our sort of ethic is that we serve our membership as opposed to them, doing stuff for us. And so, having a sense of what it is that they want to do is a tremendous guide. Yeah.
Is there a reason you guys start your emails with dear friends instead of dear personalized name or whatever?
That's a good question. The discussion on our team is that, and there's a diversity of opinions about this, but the feeling is that if it says like Dear Rwan, for example, that you actually know that whoever's sending this didn't actually know it was you, and you sort of know that lots of people are getting it. So some people feel like it's sort of markety, like feels a little bit like a fake thing to put the person's personal name in it. I think in the U.S. it's pretty standard practice to put the person's individual name, and it's sort of like I don't know, somehow it's okay, but it is a little bit artificial.
I would argue that Dear Friends makes you feel more like you're a part of a community.
Yeah, which is good. And that's one of the sort of things about Oz's email writing style is to write in the first person plural voice, us and we, and to write, and the we in this case is all of us who are receiving this email and also myself sending it. It's not, hey, will you please help me, us at Avaz, go do this thing? It's let's do this together. And that's like very intentional, and that's kind of how we try to approach organizing it. Other people use second person singular, so it's like when I woke up this morning, I couldn't believe what I saw on the front page. You've got to help me take this on. I think whatever voice you use, as long as it's sort of authentic and consistent, I think it's a good idea. The worst thing is something that feels really artificial and fake. So speaking of that, I'd like to talk about a bad email. So this is an email I received this summer. It's the Alliance for Climate Protection has gotten much better in their online organizing, so I wish them no disrespect. But I think it might be a useful thing. Folks can read this, or I can click to the next slide and you can see the first above the link text larger, and then we can talk a little bit about why this doesn't seem to work quite as well. So why don't I click forward and you can take a second to read it here, and then I'd welcome ideas from people about things that this doesn't do so well according to the secret magical formula of online organizing. So any thoughts about maybe what this could improve on? Yeah.
Well, you have to read for a while before you figure out what they really are getting at.
Yeah.
And not even like what their ask is.
Yeah.
But even what they're getting.
Yeah, there's nothing in the first paragraph.
The first paragraph is just
even remotely relating to the topic. Yeah.
The ask is written in passive voice, like, will you help us, instead of just asking directly. And then it's also just not very clear. It just says, visit our website and learn how you can help.
Yeah, how can you help? There's you don't know what help means in this case. It could be anything. When you go to the website, actually was anything. Yeah.
Well, the goal is enormous. It's vague and there's nothing specific.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this isn't even like. Yeah. So this has kind of all the hallmarks of bad online organizing. It has a kind of a fake peg to the moment, which is it's 40 years after something unrelated happened, which is not a tremendously urgent or inspiring thing. it's making an argument about. It reads like an op-ed in a sense, like not a great op-ed, but it's sort of it's kind of like arguing a general point. And this is something that's, I think, one of the biggest differences between online email writing essentially and other types of writing is email is not a persuasion medium. It's not something where you are going to convince somebody that something's important. You can give them some facts that they might not have known that might trigger them to want to do something, but mostly for this type of organizing, what you want to do is make the case to people that they can do something important now, not that an issue is important in general. If an email feels like it's hectoring, people just you close it and want to make it go away. And this is like saying we need more jobs, we need to do right by America. It really doesn't give me any opportunity to do something meaningful. I don't need to be told that by whoever's sending the email. And you can see it as it goes down. It doesn't actually, in a sense, the whole thing is like a movement story, which might make sense to put at the bottom of the message as kind of a way to rouse and inspire people. But this instead is the whole thing, and it doesn't ask for one specific clear action. So I urge you to celebrate by helping bring to the world more filet type email, and try to avoid sending spam email. The potential that can come from it is just gigantic. Avaz is now 4 million members. The Obama campaign got to 14 million members, and the lists are entirely built by people reading emails, feeling moved or connected to them in some way, and forwarding them to somebody else who then takes the action. In a sense, online organizing can be a stem cell that can grow into anything that you might need it to be. If there's anything where lots and lots of people can make a difference, it's a way that you can have a huge group of people that's connected and does stuff. But the key to it all is at the heart of it is this sort of basic respect for people's time and figuring out what it is that connects to what they want to do and giving them the opportunity to do that. I think the thing that cuts across email and this idea about Facebook, that the heart of the power of Facebook is giving people stuff that they can share, is that it's not about talking at people, it's about empowering people, giving people the opportunity to actually do stuff. And that's kind of why sort of websites in themselves are kind of, I think, inert. They rely on people coming to visit your page and just sort of see what's going on, as opposed to a conversation, even if it's a kind of weird conversation that comes in the form of action alerts and occasional polls and surveys. Creating a two-way mechanism and then giving people things to do is the heart of it. That's the core of what I wanted to say. If you come away with nothing else, I urge you to remember this and to try to diagram, if you're going to send an email like this, to try putting it against a formula like this and make sure these elements are in there. I'd be delighted to answer any questions. Yeah.
Can you give a little bit more detail on why save the story till the end? Because there's so many times when people start off email campaigns by trying to hook people in with some type of emotional story.
So when I say movement story, what I mean specifically is just the bigger picture story of if the email is about a particular moment, the movement story is about how this is part of a larger movement.
Got it.
I actually think there's often a temptation to start with a vignette at the beginning of a message. I actually think it's in our testing, we find that people tend to respond with something that clearly illustrates what the crisis or opportunity is. When we send a message that starts with an illustrative example, people start reading it, don't know what it is, and move on in their inbox. The kind of moving individual story does better underneath it. It's more like an AP. It's like a newspaper story where you want to have the lead read. Yeah.
Do you use text messages?
So we are excited about text messages. There are more than 2 billion people who have mobile phones that use text. and lots of places it's much more widespread than email. The thing with text messages is that they don't kind of scale as well. And by that I mean emails are free to send, text messages cost a little bit each. Also, people don't forward text messages to large groups of people. Like the way that for organizations that have large SMS lists, they tend to come from people being in the same place at the same time and asking everybody to sign up for a text at that moment. And like, for example, a U2 concert, Bono would say, everyone take your phone out, text this number, and then you can see the list of people texting in on a huge screen. It's very rare that you'll receive a text message that so excites you that you'll then forward that text message to everyone in your text message address book. And so it's difficult to build sort of an organization or an ongoing relationship on text alone. What text is great for is kind of in addition to email. You can use it, like at the Copenhagen Climate Summit, we set up an SMS system so all the kind of NGO and activist people from NGOs were all subscribed, and someone could send a message and say, instant protest outside of the such and such place in 1 hour, and everyone would show up for it. It's really useful when people are geographically proximate, or when there's some kind of super breaking piece of news. Greenpeace Argentina used their SMS list to have thousands of people call and text a legislator while he was testifying against an environmental protection law that he was opposing. And so, sort of ruined his day a little bit, but also helped defend the law. And that was something that people read emails over a long period of time, whereas text messages people get.
No, I mean, I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
But have you guys looked? So I'm looking at it from the perspective of India, where emails, online, people who are online are using emails in a much, much smaller proportion than the people who have cell phones.
Yeah.
Especially for political campaigns, text messages would become very important. That said, like, they still have all the cost and drawback. But if you were to think of this in the context of text messages, have you guys done any research on what an effective text message would look like? If you were to send text messages?
It's tricky, right? Like, there aren't that great practices for it. I've looked at sort of every person and group that we can find. Twitter, funny thing with Twitter, it tends to actually have a link, and then people click the link and go to a page with more information or can do an action. With text messages, people, your target audience are people who are not sitting in computers, they're people who are sitting on their phones. And so
or some people might actually, at least in the case of India, actually have internet on their phone. So I don't know if you can actually get an SMS, click on it, but then...
I mean, if you have an iPhone, then you can, but if you have an iPhone, you can also get email. Like the types of actions you can organize through SMS are like mass call-ins or people showing up at a location. You can do, Amnesty International in Norway has a 20,000 person text message list that they raise money from because people consent to pay like 30 cents each every time they respond to a text from it. And so they can say like, respond if you want to donate to this thing or whatever. I'm still wanting to see, and we're looking very actively to see whether there's a way to build a kind of SMS large organization that's that's sort of text centric. But from everything that we've seen, it's really something that can extend an online community that's really especially centered on email, where you have lots of channels to reach people. Having something that creating a sort of a buzz that's all SMS based would be really but it's something we would love to do if you see a way to do it. Yeah.
Have you had any experience with creating online databases to link people and create an online community?
Tell me a little bit more about what you do.
So, for example, if you want to network a group of people, say there's a group of 1,000 people or an alumni group, what are kind of the best tools to use? Is it a database where everyone can input their information and then connect? Is it going through an existing LinkedIn or Facebook group? Kind of what are the tools to bring different people together that you have found have been effective? Well,
let me first ask if you can guess which tool I would recommend above all others.
Email.
Yes. And specifically, like So email, if you set up like a Google group or a discussion list, the thing that inevitably happens is that the people with the most time on their hands send the most emails, and everybody else, disengages. Setting up a Facebook group or page can be great. After you get to 5,000 on a Facebook group, you can't actually send messages to all the members. And if you're not sending messages to people's inboxes on Facebook, they tend not to, they're very unlikely to see them. Email is really the only medium where you can get to any size and still send a message to everybody that sits there until they've dealt with it. Getting to that size, you have to find some reason why people would sign up. And you can, the very simplest thing you can do is set up a Google spreadsheet. And from Google Spreadsheets, you can make a form. And on that form, you just press create form on the top. And from that form, you can have different sign-up fields, including email addresses that you can send people from your personal email folder. And we've done that, sometimes for, like in a particular city when we're organizing volunteers there, we'll set up a page like that for a volunteer organizer and email our members, and everything is signed through that way. But once you have someone's email address, you can ask them to do all kinds of things, and it's like having their phone number. Like you can keep pestering them until they don't want you to. And if you want to have a good relationship, you shouldn't pester them. But it doesn't have walls in the way that things like Facebook or other social networking sites do.
What about linking? Maybe you do want to create a wall sometimes if you want to create like a exclusive community and linking people in between.
Yeah.
Have you found a difference between something like LinkedIn or Facebook or a different just a database that you make?
If you want people to be able to communicate with each other, you could use something like Ning, N-I-N-G, which allows you to create a sort of social network, a self-standing social network. The thing that we tend to find over and over, and we try every technology we can find late at night, is that people tend not to actually spend time on sort of websites or in communications media that are outside of their daily routines. And so, like Facebook isn't increasingly part of people's daily routines, but if it's a special site for Kennedy School alumni, people just don't go there and check it very often. Like unless they really don't have anything else going on, they're in their email boxes because they actually do work there. And so one sort of good thing to do is to have an email list where people can send in updates, and then you can include all those updates when you send an email out to the list. But just, I think the thing you want to, one thing you want to do is not punish the people who only have a little bit of time to invest. Especially if you want to get all the large group of people, you want to have a way for people to engage that only takes a little bit of their time. And I think stuff like Facebook can be useful for higher amounts of engagement, but we're all probably members of lots of different Facebook groups that don't actually play a role in our lives week to week. Yeah.
When I open my Facebook, I just look at the first page. I'm sure there's tons of people sending so many things. I don't go to the older posts, old posts. How can you, if you want to post things, how can you make sure that all your quote-unquote friends read it?
On Facebook?
Yeah.
You can post over and over. The fact that, so you can send messages. If you look at so if you go to a Facebook page, you have a little box. Oh, well, never mind.
I can log you in. Or we can steal the Charles Hotels.
Thank you. So here's Facebook right now. So up here you have your notifications of what people want to do or have been doing. these are actual messages. And this is like a message from an activist thing. And those messages people actually see. The problem is that those messages, you can only send messages to people's inboxes if you have less than 5,000 members of a Facebook group. That's problem number one. Problem number two is these messages are kind of annoying. Like, Facebook has a really bad interface to handle messages, and in our experience, people are less responsive to these than they are to regular emails. The last thing, which is the sort of bigger channel, is updates. And as you say, you only see certain updates that appear in your newsfeed. There's a ton here. I can keep going down. You know, this is all today. And I'll never see the vast majority of Facebook updates. So if you want people to actually see something, I mean, the best thing to do is to call them or find them in the street. The second best is to email them. The third or 10th best is to post a Facebook update. That said, you know, Avaz's Facebook strategy right now, we mostly try to get people to share stuff through their own Facebook feed because, you know, some fraction of a lot of people's friends is better than just our own. But then we also have a Facebook page where we post updates, and we also now are experimenting with creating pages around particular causes that can grow in themselves. One of the great things about email is that if you join Avaz, if you sign up for an Avaz campaign around the climate change in Copenhagen, we can email you about a different issue a week later. And you know, you might just delete the email, you might unsubscribe, but very often we find people have interests that span lots of different issues. With Facebook, it's much harder to do that because people tend not to be interested in Avaz as Avaz. They're interested in Avaz around particular campaigns. So on Facebook, you either have to become a fan of Avaz, which is, you know, a higher bar, or you become a fan of a particular Facebook campaign that we're running, and then it's very hard for us to actually contact you again to talk about a different campaign. Maybe there's some way.
So I'm interested in when you guys decide to take up some issue or cause, how do you guys actually define success when you're looking back to see what impact you guys had, if you guys had any impact at all? Like, what metrics do you use to measure it? And also, when it comes to emails, like, what's a good percentage of emails that have to be opened for that to have been a successful email?
Yeah.
And other sorts of metrics.
Those are excellent questions. The biggest thing, like ultimately the reason, the point of all of Avaz campaigns and Avaz's existence is to make a difference in the world. And our mission, our humble mission, is to close the gap between the world we have and the world most people everywhere want. Figuring out whether the gap is being closed by a particular action is very hard. And it doesn't mean we, try to figure it out. It does mean that the indicators are really diffuse. And a lot of it is like coming up with our best idea and then talking to the people involved. And you can look at press coverage, but press coverage often doesn't tell the real story. Sometimes if your targets are friendly decision makers, you can ask them, although they might be interested in telling you you've made a bigger difference than we thought. If they're unfriendly decision makers, they'll almost never admit they had an impact. One good indicator is if you're targeting someone hostile or targeting someone who doesn't want to do the thing you want them to do and they react in some way, that's usually a good sign that they're noticing. Like we did al-Bashir in Sudan was indicted by the International Criminal Court. He dismissed the criminal court as a Western conspiracy. And we ran newspaper ads in neighboring countries that showed Bush and him, and they said, what do they have in common? They both hate the International Criminal Court. And, he didn't turn himself in, but he did start calling all the editors of newspapers in the region and asking them to run the ad, and had people write furious letters to the editor that did run the ad. That suggested to us that there was some impact that went through. Measuring impact is, and then sometimes you win, and then you can't tell what how big a role you played, but that's, if we want every campaign, I think we feel great. In terms of the things we can measure are members' actions and all the things that generate numbers. So we look at the open rate. Typically, an email gets opened 15 to 20% of the time. Open rates actually have more to do. They sometimes have something to do with like whether the topic that you're working on is something that's really hot for people. But they, sometimes they have to do with like how quickly your email is delivered by the internet service provider, things like that. The big metric we really care about is what percent of people who open the email take an action. And on that, if it's something simple like signing a petition or writing to a government, then basically a third, 33% is our threshold for whether it's in a acceptably strong range. For things like donating, it's a much smaller percent. There's some emails we ask people to organize events or parties or protests, or make a video, do really complex things. And in those cases, we try to, like, I think for a fundraiser, it's a strong response if we raise like 35 cents per email opened on average, but that's still a very small fraction of all the people that open the email donating. And for asking people to organize a candlelit vigil in the middle of December, especially in Northern Hemisphere countries, there is no kind of good benchmark. However, we often will send polls where we ask people, like, what do you think of this email, and just get responses in that way to get a sense of whether people are interested. Yeah.
So what about newsletters?
So, I'm not an expert in newsletters, so I can just offer my thoughts. My advice for newsletters would be to have an above the link thing and then have the rest of the newsletter. So essentially, if there's one thing that's particularly exciting, useful, entertaining, like, let me see and digest that before having to dig into the subjects of the whole thing. That's people interact in a very brief way for stuff, and I think one of the temptations with anything online is to try to give people, make people get through the medicine before they get to the sugar. But actually, I think giving them the sugar right up front is the best way to, people can always just tune you out. And so making it a satisfying experience just to read and see the quote of the day at the top of the newsletter or whatever, and then they can stay for the other stuff if they want to.
But you guys don't send newsletters.
We don't send newsletters. We're always sort of trying to evaluate how much time to spend in our emails talking about what did happen versus talking about what's going to happen. In general, the member response is much stronger to opportunities to do something as opposed to report backs about other stuff, stuff that happened in the past. So we generally, every sort of couple of months, will send a report back either about a specific awesome thing that happened or about a big thing. Something our members tend to really enjoy is when they have a page where people can post comments and see what everyone else has posted. And so sometimes we'll, at the end of the Copenhagen Summit, we had a page where you could see a slideshow and videos of individuals around the world and different actions, and then there was also a kind of comment board. And I think like 55,000 people posted different, comments to each other, and it's cool to see comments rolling in. There's a tool called scribblelive.com that basically is a real-time ticker of comments as they're posted, and that can sort of Google translate into whatever language. So Scribblelive is our friend. Facebook also has an embeddable little thing like that. But generally, we always have this impulse to tell stories about all the stuff we're doing, but actually, I think the biggest sort of use that people have for our emails is opportunities to take actions as opposed to learn about them. Yeah.
I have a question just about timing and timeliness for the crisis opportunities that you use. So for something that's a real long-term campaign, so yeah, I guess the most recent thing would be like the healthcare debate.
Yeah.
What metrics are you using at Avaz to evaluate when is the time to activate the list? When can you get the biggest bang for your buck? I mean, I know it's an art, not a science, but any advice you have would be really great.
The key thing is finding moments along the way. And so that can be something as, like for healthcare, you can do when someone's going to testify, or when a committee is going to meet, or when someone's going to go on TV. working next door to me is a friend with the Progressive Change Campaign Committee or Coalition. And have been doing a lot of work on healthcare for the last kind of month. They've been working on getting more and more senators to sign this letter supporting the public option. And every time a senator signs on, they send another email saying like, momentum, Senator such and such signed up. Having some basis for sending an email at a particular moment is good, but it doesn't have to be that strong. It's tied to something in the real world, tied the action to something in the real world. If there's absolutely nothing going on the issue, you could say, there's been nothing on this issue for a long time. Let's make this Friday a moment that actually gets things started again. But, not making, you can create moments like that if there's enough kind of juice around doing it. But I think, the most useful thing is to look for or create little hooks for stuff and build off of those, as opposed to saying it's 3 months until the big day. Let's work towards that. If you look at political campaigns, if every email was about election day, there'd be no way to have 2 years of email building up to that moment. Instead, it's like, our quarterly fundraising report is about to be filed. That's how strong we are. Or, we just opened up our first office in Idaho. Let's raise some money and show the Idahoans that we care about them too. Have stories so that it feels like something's happening as opposed to kind of a march towards plenty or something. Yeah.
I don't know if you can comment on this, but there's a sense that Obama's network is kind of stalled out.
Yeah.
My sense is that they're just pumping out more and more emails, and that's about 2 a day, and rarely look at them nowadays. Is there any thoughts, are there any thoughts that you have on this?
Yeah. As personal disclosure, the emails are, some good friends of mine are involved in those emails, so I probably have a skewed perspective. But,
Another disclaimer, most of the Kennedy school actually is on the Obama email list, so
yeah,
we're all getting those emails.
So the hardest thing is when people sign up for one thing and then that thing happens, or you move to the next thing, and then they're still on your list and you're still having to engage with the stuff that is different. So for Obama, that was pre and post election. And in a sense, it's just a totally different universe. And one thing that's surprising is the fraction of actions being taken, funds being donated, events being organized by people now who weren't on the list before the election. It's actually, in some ways, a quite different community. And so if you haven't done anything with their online, organizing tools since the election, you're still receiving the messages. In a sense, the Organizing for America team is hoping to pull you into stuff, but it's a different space and the energy is different. That said, some of the things they've done have been pretty successful, and I think that the fight that they're in right now around healthcare has been there's just a whole lot of people that are really invested in trying to make it happen.
Is this a case of less might be more, though? If they slowed it down,
yeah,
and were more selective, would they have gotten a bigger impact?
So I know one huge organization did a long-term test where they segmented, I think, a few 100,000 people to receive just a maximum of an email a week, and then another large group of people who they sent as many messages as they wanted. And they found for the group that they sent lots of messages to, the reaction per email went down a lot, but the total number of actions that they took went up. So you can vote with your clicks in a sense if you don't like that strategy. One thing that if you try to unsubscribe from Amazon.org, you can do it, but first you'll see a screen that says, we don't want to lose you, would you like to sign up for our only once a week list? And then you'll get less email. And that's, for a lot of people, that's all that. I don't know if Organizing for America has that. We're thinking about that, whether to go in that direction of the VOZ, but our general approach has been to try to send a little bit less, except for in major moments.
So it's 7:30 now. I think this has been an incredibly value-adding exercise, I know for me at least, and I hope you guys can all join me in thanking them. Ben's mentioned that he has about 5 or 10 minutes left, so if you guys want to come and approach him with sort of individual questions about your own online campaigns that you might be working on or questions that you have, I think he's welcome to that. And I just wanted to let you guys know the next digital workshop in this series will be on March 31st, and it will be by Wikler, who is an adjunct lecturer here at Kennedy School. So I hope you guys can join us.
Thank you so much. It's been really terrific questions. And
take some remaining food as well, because they're going to throw it away if you guys need it.
Any other questions from staff, or we'll come up with a question? Sure.
So attitude really is a phenomenon. And I like this question of slackness, which is, I think, one of the biggest problems with online communities, and trying to get people to calling to their job. Maybe doing something digitally that doesn't necessarily translate into real traditional. You might sort of read an article online and say you've sort of done your duty of being aware of the issue, rather than in the old days you'd actually take it to the streets, protest the signs, and now you can just click on the link.
Actually, it's in the reading for tomorrow. There's this quote I thought about you, because like so blah 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 blah. Claude Zanes, a 19-year-old sophomore at Emerson College, noted that his parents talked about how they protested the Vietnam War by marching in crowds to recruiting stations. Then remarked, that just doesn't happen anymore. Everything now is about the click of a mouse. You can do so much online sitting at your desk.
Right.
It's exactly.
I think that actually about done quite a good job of that, especially internationally, because you've got some people on your list. And one of the things that struck me was going on one of the demos in London around climate change and having the ability to bring hats. And like suddenly this was something that you previously had seen in online, suddenly you see real people having a real hat as a real demo, and it just, for me, it really made that connection so wow, so it was bigger than just that.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's one of the
very helpful. So many interesting things going on.
Are you going to the Palestinian thing?
sometimes
Whether you can
so that's
still get the way. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to do varying levels of either from Oh really? I just put it on sleep. Same. I just put it on sleep.
Shut it down.